this, all right, see, are we connected now? I think so. All right. Hey, everybody. This is Andrew, and this is our second ever Missionary Monday live. And so, welcome, those of you who are watching. It's great to see y'all, and we have a lot of stuff to cover today. I've worked a little bit on the lighting. I actually moved, and so you might notice the sound's a little different. I'm not sure how this is going to work out. We'll see. You can tell me in the feedback. I'm actually out in the lanai, or for some of you that'd be like, it's called the Florida room, and so the sound might be a little different. It looks like the lighting is a lot better though. So got a lot of things on our schedule today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Brazilian reaction to the recent U.S. elections. Some pretty funny stuff, some pretty interesting stuff there. We're going to talk a little bit about some of our activities that are going on. We're going to talk, of course, a little bit about the Missionary Max books, so you can keep some interesting things about those. But first off, I want to start off with a couple things. Last week, I mentioned a post that I was going to be doing about our travels. It's actually just a bunch of pictures from our travels up in New York, and so I have that, and that's live. It's been live for a few days, and so I'm just going to put it here, and I'm going to put it right now. There is now a link to that on the comments to this page, so you can look at that and when you get a chance and enjoy those pictures. Lots of fun pictures. Once again, we just had a blast up in New York State, and there's also some pictures on there from our time in Washington D.C., different adventures there. And on the page, on the link, there's also a link to our Instagram account. So if you don't follow us on Facebook, you can follow us, or if you follow us on Facebook, you can also follow us on Instagram, and just get the pictures. Traveling all around gives us all kinds of opportunities to take some really neat pictures, so you can look at that. A couple other things I want to talk about really quick. Coming up on the website, be looking for this. It won't be today, but it might be tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to get this up. When I was up in New York, I had the opportunity to work for a gas company, natural gas company in the city of Corning, and I did some work for them. I was going to say part-time, but it was about 8 hours a day, and when I worked every day, it was 40 hours a week. So it was a lot of time that I spent there, and I learned a lot about natural gas. I also relearned a lot of lessons about working in the secular field. A lot of times, those of us who are in ministry, at least in my case, it's easy to lose touch with what's going on in the secular world. And so there's a lot of lessons, a lot of things I've been thinking over, and so I'm going to try to get those down on paper, or in cyberspace anyway, so you can do that. Look for that, and I'll have a link for it next week when we do this. There's one thing I want to share with you, and I'm going to share it right now. I'm going to put another link here on the bottom of in the comments section. This video that I'm going to put here. We work with a mission agency. Many of you know we work with a mission agency called Baptist and Missions. And outstanding mission agency. We're proud to be a part of this this organization that sends missionaries. Well, the churches send missionaries, but they facilitate missionaries going all over the globe. And so they just recently put a video that shows the inner workings of their home office, and I thought that'd be interesting because you might never get a chance to go to Baptist and Missions home office or the home office of another missions agency. But you will, you might enjoy this video because the director, Vernon Rosenau, kind of gives a guided tour, and you get kind of an idea of everything that goes into a missions agency, and all of the paperwork and all of the infrastructure that goes into sending your missionaries to foreign fields, the missionaries your church supports. So I thought that it's very well done, quality video. So I'm going to put it right here, and then you can look it up and at your at your leisure, and also take a look around, because Baptist Missions has its own page on Vimeo, or I don't know how you say that, but they have their own page and several videos, and very interesting ones. So you can check those out as well, and there's some really neat stuff. I spent a good 15 minutes just going through the videos and looking, and very interesting stuff. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit. Oh, one more thing before we get started. Two more things. First of all, give a shout out to my brother Daniel. This was a big week for my brother. Started out, first part of the week, he and I went to the airport. He's been learning how to fly, taking flying lessons in an airplane. I don't know, I guess there's other ways to learn how to fly, but he's been getting his pilot's license, basically. And so he went all Millennium Falcon and did his first solo flight. And so he invited me to that, and I got to watch that, get some pictures, got some videos. So you can see that if you scroll down on our video page, on my Facebook page, you can see the pictures and videos I took of that. I was very proud of them. And then, as if that wasn't enough emotion, if that wasn't enough excitement for the week for my brother, then on Friday, their fourth child was born, Alistair Hamilton Cummings. And of course that was neat for us to see, and not see the birth, obviously, but get to meet our new nephew, and it was a very special moment. This is the first, by the way, because I live in Brazil, so it's the first nephew that I have actually, first of my nephews that I was actually got to hold after they were born. I usually have met my other nephews several months or even years after the fact, when we've been back in the States. So just a really neat experience. And you can, I believe on my Facebook page, you scroll down there, and there's a picture of myself with Alistair Hamilton. And then yesterday was a great day. Yesterday we went to the Iglesia Bautista Maranata, which is a Spanish language church in the city of here in the city of Lakeland. They used to meet years ago. They were just this little congregation of Spanish-speaking people that met in spare rooms that our church had, Fellowship Baptist Church in Lakeland, Florida. But then they grew and they expanded, and they kind of exploded out of those facilities and went to new facilities on the north side of town, and then they kind of exploded out of those. And but they're still there. They're building a new building, and it's always just a really neat experience. It's kind of a role reversal to me, because usually when people come to the United States, or I'm sorry, when people come and visit us in Brazil, I'm the guy translating for the gringo who can't speak the language. Well, I go to the Mexican church, and while I can kind of fake Spanish, I can't preach in Spanish, and so suddenly I'm the gringo who doesn't know the language, and there's someone who translates for me. And something really funny happened. Sometimes I give an illustration, and if I've been in your church, you've more likely heard this illustration of something that happened when we were in Brazil, about a young man who got saved and took us right to his house, and came back out of his house with a shoe, and he dumped something out of the shoe and handed it to me, and it was his stash of weed. That's marijuana. I grew up kind of sheltered. It was the first time someone had ever given me illegal drugs. So, and he wasn't giving them to me. He wanted me to get rid of them. He didn't want drugs, and it's a great story. So I told this story at the Mexican church, and then I finished the message, sat down, and they had a few announcements, and they said, "Now, Andrew, we want you to come back up here, because we're going to give you a love offering." And I hear, "That's great." So I went up, and the pastor pulls out a sneaker, and he says, "Here," and then he pulls out this envelope from the sneaker, and everybody just starts dying, because of course he's referring to that story that I had just told, and so it was hilarious. That's the most creative way anyone's ever given us a love offering at their church. It was really neat. Whenever we go to that church, it's really neat. Pastor Ramirez at that church is doing an outstanding job. Later this month, I'm going to sit down with him and just kind of pick his brain on church ministry, because he works with Hispanics, does a really good job, and and I've always learned from him when I've been there. So, outstanding work here in Lakeland, Florida. All right, now let's go, and of course, this is what y'all been waiting for, because I kind of teased this late last week, what we were going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about the Brazilian reactions to the recent United States elections. Now, what I'm not going to do here is talk about my opinions of what happened. If you want to know those, for some reason, just scroll down my Facebook feed, and you'll get more than you bargained for, I'm sure. What I think about this the whole shebang is no secret. So that's not what I want to talk about here. I'm talking about the elections as it relates to Brazil. Three different things. First off, some really funny things have come across, because Brazilians sometimes don't understand our political system, just like we don't understand theirs. And so there's some interpretations that are kind of funny. And the funniest thing was a friend of mine who posted on Facebook, a friend of mine in Brazil, posted on Facebook a conversation he had with a friend of his. Now, this is really funny, so I'm going to tell you this, but I have to set it up, and you have to learn some things about Brazilian politics to understand how funny this is. So I brought some visuals. In Brazil, there are two parties. Over on the left, we have the PT. It's the Workers' Party. It's left-leaning, communist. There's actually a communist party in Brazil, smaller, but they're allied. And then over here on the right, you have the PSDB, or what's called, they refer to themselves as the Tucanos. Or in Portuguese, that's the Tucanos. And they're over here. So you have the PT and the Tucanos. And these guys are on the left, these guys are on the right, and then there are a whole host of other political parties that orbit around these two. And sometimes in their orbits, they'll switch alignments, and some of them are farther to the right, and some of them are farther to the left, some of them are more in the middle. It's a glorious mess. Sometimes people here in the U.S. say, well, this two-party system's terrible. We should have a multi-party system. And I look at just the unbelievable mess that Brazilian politics is with their multi-party system, and I go, I don't know. Two-party system has its problems, but oh my word. So anyway, back to my friend's Facebook post. So, a friend of his, by the way, both of these parties and all of the parties, there's corruption all the way through it in Brazilian politics. So, there's a guy from this party who's being investigated for corruption. There's always someone being investigated for corruption somewhere. Okay, that's just reality of Brazilian politics. So, there's a guy from this party who's being investigated for corruption. My Brazilian friend, a guy came up to him from this party, okay, the opposite party, and from the PT, and said, you know what, this whole Donald Trump thing is just a distraction organized by the Tucanos to draw people's attention away from this politician who's being investigated for corruption. Now just let that sink in for a minute. So, Americans, we now know why Donald Trump got elected, and all these pundits that I see on CNN and other places, they can go home, because it's been revealed to us it was a plot by the Tucanos in Brazil to draw attention away from one of their B-list politicians who's being investigated for corruption. That's it. We've got it figured out. By the way, these guys here in Brazil, they're known for some really interesting conspiracy theories. And the problem with conspiracy theories, theories make for great fiction. I should know. However, reality is often far more complicated. So anyway, there's that. So next, one thing that affects us, when Mr. Trump was elected, the stock market became and has continued to be extremely volatile. It just took a nosedive, and then it jumped way back up. And what that does is it makes the dollar stronger. And I'm trying to explain all this really quickly, because when the market's volatile, people pull their dollars out of high risk investments, and many Brazilian investments are considered high risk investments. So they pull them out. So there's less dollars, and it's a law. Then it's the law of supply and demand, and the dollar goes up. Now that doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes there's mitigating factors, but usually when there's a volatile U.S. market, or anywhere else in the world, I can go and find that the dollar has gone up. So this is good for us in the short run, because it means our dollars here are worth more in Brazilian money, so we have more buying power. However, it is not good for Brazilian churches in the long run, because Brazilian believers need to be able to finance their own churches and support their own churches. And whenever the dollar strengthens, that makes it that much harder economically for Brazilians. And the Brazilian economy was already in a crisis. So it makes me happy every time I do an exchange and I see that high dollar. But then for my Brazilian friends and the members of the Ebenezer congregation, it gets a little dicey. Okay. One more effect that this has, and then we'll get on to something much more fun for me to talk about, which is, of course, Missionary Max. But one more thing is that there is you've probably seen this in the news with the election of Mr. Trump. This has given rise to other right-wing parties in Europe and in other places in the world, and so and Brazil is also a part of that. This party right here we were talking about, they've been in power for quite some time. Well, that power has disintegrated. The president was impeached. Brazilians are fed up with corruption, so then they impeached the Speaker of the House, who had orchestrated her impeachment, and it's chaos. It really is. And out of this chaos, a few voices are emerging, and one of them is a guy named Bolsonaro. Now, Bolsonaro, he says a lot of things I agree with. He's against abortion. He is strong on what we call family values. He's strong on religious freedom, those kind of things. He is not a clone of Donald Trump. For example, Donald Trump's an outsider. Bolsonaro's a career politician. But he is a clone in that you'll hear Brazilians say, well, he tells it like it is. Where have we heard that before? He says, someone just put down here, good missionary. Yeah, that's someone from Batavia. That's funny. Sometime I'll have to tell you all that story. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. So anyway, back to Bolsonaro. People say, well, he tells it like it is. He also doesn't demonstrate very much self-control. Where have we seen that before? He's prone to fits of loud profanity and just talking profanely. And then more worrisome to me as someone who lives there and kind of observes what's going on, and as the wife, or as someone who has a Brazilian wife and 2 Brazilian children, Bolsonaro likes to say a lot of good things about the military dictatorship. He says he likes to say, and Brazil was run by a dictatorship from the early 60s all the way through to the early 80s, and so he says a lot of nice things about this. Well, when there was a dictatorship, for example, crime is rampant in Brazil now, and violent crime is rampant. And during the mixed military dictatorship, there wasn't nearly as much violent crime as there is today. I mean, things are just out of control today. And there were some other things, but economically during the military dictatorship, Brazil was terrible, and the military dictatorship was also brutal to anyone who dissented, and so people went missing. There's still people who they don't know what happened to them. Their families are still looking for them. People would be arrested and then die in prison or hang themselves in prison. One guy, the government distributed a photo of the guy hanging in his cell, And the only problem was his feet were dragging on the ground. And some people say, oh yeah, they're so inept they can't even... Well, I think that was on purpose. That was a warning. Don't cross us. That was the kind of government that existed during the military dictatorship of Brazil. And so every time I start hearing someone talking about that kind of thing and saying, oh, we should bring back the military dictatorship, that bothers me a lot. There are solutions for the country without military control, I believe. And so this guy's been gaining ground for a long time. Well, with the election of Mr. Trump, suddenly there was just a huge burst, and people are saying now, Donald Trump has shown us the way, and now we can elect this guy. In fact, and I'm going to put here, I've never tried this before. I think I can do it. I'm going to try to upload. I'm going to try to upload this picture. It's not letting me do it. Hate it when that happens. Well, what I'm going to do, what I'll do then afterwards, I'll mess around with this afterwards. But basically, and see if I can get it to go out. If not, I'll put it on my Facebook page, and I will. But what it shows, someone made a graphic, and I've seen all these graphics. It shows Donald Trump. It's a big Photoshop thing. So it shows Donald Trump standing on a tank, American flag in the background. He's holding some sort of machine gun in his hand, and there's an eagle. There's fireworks, and on the side of the tank is written Trump, and that's and I've seen that image around. Well, someone took that, and then they put Bolsonaro on top of the tank, holding the same gun. The Brazilian flag is behind him. The name Bolsonaro is written on the side of the tank. There's the fireworks. There's still the eagle, and the number 2018, which is when the next presidential election is. So there's a lot of people saying, "Wow, this guy, if Trump can get elected, well, this guy can get elected." Well, yes, he can, and I'm just not sure if that's a good thing. So time will have to tell. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this develops over the next few days and weeks. All right, so enough of that. What I want to do now is I want to talk a little bit about Missionary Max, and for those of you who may not know, I've written 2 books, Missionary Max and the Jungle Princess, and then the sequel, Missionary Max and the Lost City. And there's another book kind of running around in my head. I'm not sure what it's going to be called yet. Missionary Max and something. We're going to go with that theme. That seems to be working. What I wanted to talk about today, I have gotten, since the second book was published, I have gotten people who write in. They say, we really like the book. We hate this particular character. And the character is Mary Sue. Now, if you've only read the first book, you have not met Mary Sue. You've been introduced to her in that you know that Max has a girlfriend back in America, and her name is Mary Sue. You have not met her. Well, in the second book, she shows up. She comes for a visit. And hilarity ensues. And people write back and they say to me, we hate Mary Sue. We don't like... We just hate her, and it's usually people who've read the book. A lot of times, someone's is reading it, and so they've gotten like halfway through, and they're just here. We hate this woman. How could someone be? It's interesting. No one has ever told me they hated the villain. There's several bad guys in here. No one's ever written to told me we hated them, but they have written to tell me we hated her. So let's talk about it. People have asked, where did you get her? What? Without giving any spoilers, I'll just say this. Mary Sue, when she arrives, she has a very Americanized view of Christianity and a very Americanized view of how things should work. And she's constantly, as anyone is who goes to a different country, and as every missionary is, she's constantly challenged by these. And let's say that she does not respond well. Okay? That she just does not respond well. So the question is, where did I get that? Well, unfortunately, It's based on reality, and most of it comes from me, and dumb things that I said or did when I first arrived in Brazil. Now, when I first went to Brazil, I was single and I lived in a dorm full of Brazilian guys. And so those guys were extremely patient with me. They also did some funny pranks, which I've told a lot of people. I might share some of those with you sometime. That would be a great subject for a whole thing. Some of the pranks my Brazilian friends and now colleagues in the ministry pulled on me when I first got there. So, but my response in many ways was not that great. And fortunately, I was living in this dorm with these patient guys, and they were very patient with me and explaining how things were and why I shouldn't say things that way and why I shouldn't do things that way. But there were instances where, even relationships were strained, and later on I'd have to go back and mend them because of my Americanisms. And even today, I've been a full-time missionary now for 10 years, plus the 2 years I was a short-term missionary, plus the time I lived in Brazil after I was married, and I'm married to a Brazilian, and I have 2 Brazilian kids. Even today, sometimes my lovely wife, the Brazilian bombshell, will look at me and she'll say, "You just need to stop being so American." And so when people write me and they say, "Wow, we hate Mary Sue," my reaction is great, wonderful. And so when God puts you in a place where you're in a different culture and you're ministering to people in a different culture, either in some other country or one of the many cultures that exist here in the United States, don't be Mary Sue. That's the thing. Don't be Mary Sue. Now, for those of you who might be in the middle of the book or who haven't picked it up yet, and you're despairing about poor Mary Sue, read it till the end. I can't give away much more than that. I will say this: those of you who, like me, are really big fans of the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution are going to like the end of the book a lot. So, Missionary Max and the Jungle Princess, Mary Sue you meet in Missionary Max and the Lost City. Now, another thing, and I mention this every once in a while on Facebook, if you've read them and you've enjoyed the Missionary Max books, then I would encourage you, please go to the website and click on the Missionary Max. So just type in Missionary. I said the website. Go to Amazon and click on there and write a review. I would love to hear what you think, and also writing a review helps the book to gain traction on Amazon. So that helps me out. So if you read it, you enjoyed it, and you can find the time to just click on the link in Facebook, and I'll put the link here to you to make it more convenient. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. I am going to do that right now. Let's go Amazon.com, and we will search Missionary Max. Boom. And the first 2 results on that page are going to be Missionary Max and the Jungle Princess and Missionary Max in the Lost City. And so then you can click on that, and if you don't have it, then you can order it, either Kindle or the Kindle version or the regular version. And then you can, and if you've already read it, then you can go right there and you can, either one of them or both, you can go and leave a review on that, and that'd be wonderful. So that's something you can do to help Missionary Max books get traction. All right, so we've talked about Brazil, we've talked about Missionary Max. That's all I have for today. I'm very grateful. I've seen a lot of you interacting here. That's wonderful. And very grateful that you've taken this little time out of your schedule to come and spend some time with me. And look forward to it. Hopefully next Monday, same time, same station, we'll be here with a lot more interesting stuff to talk about and share. So until then, God bless, and I'll see you at the next Missionary Monday.